Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of Invasion of the Dinosaurs, the second story of the 11th season of classic Doctor Who, starring John Pertwee as the third Doctor. Invasion of the Dinosaurs is the 71st story overall, is 6 parts long, and is written by Malcolm Hawke. Part 1 was actually entitled Invasion in an attempt to keep the dinosaurs' appearance a secret. So, the plot of Invasion of the Dinosaurs is as follows. Returning to London, the Doctor and Sarah Jane Smith find the city almost completely devoid of life. The civilian population has been evacuated in the wake of an unimaginable event. Somehow, dinosaurs have returned to terrorize the Earth. As the Brigadier and unit faced off increasingly vicious attacks from the gigantic prehistoric reptiles, the Doctor investigates just how these monsters are appearing without warning. But when Sarah Jane is kidnapped, the Doctor realizes that perhaps even his oldest friends can't be trusted. So that is the plot of Invasion of the Dinosaurs. So Invasion of the Dinosaurs? What the actual fuck was that? What the actual fuck was that? I mean, I was actually very disappointed in this story, and it's the second story of the John Pertwee era that I'm not really too fond of. The first being the Clause of Access, but hey, the Clause of Access at least does have some more enjoyable elements than this story does, and Invasion of the Dinosaurs is actually my least favorite story in the John Pertwee era of all 24 stories. This is the one I actually like the least of all of them. The overall production was weak, so to say, but it did have some good bits. I did like the airiness of an empty London because the evacuation. It actually reminded me of the first COVID lockdown. The relocation from definitely paid off and made the story feel more authentic and closer to home. The sets were basic, but I actually liked how unit were pretty much operating from a school classroom, and of course we have the notorious dinosaurs. A lot of this story detractors judge it because I rubbish the dinosaur look, but I don't really think it's fair to judge Doctor Who well, in this story based on how bad the dinosaurs look. But because Doctor Who back then didn't have the luxury of a big Hollywood production budget, so they had to make do with what they have. And the dinosaurs they actually looked okay, even though they looked dodgy in some parts, especially when the T Rex are fighting. I think it was the Brontosaurus in episode 6. Next, even if this story got a Day of the Daleks Day of the Daleks special release version of the story, it wouldn't really help fix these issues because the other main issues such as the plot execution and the pacing would actually still remain, so to speak. The script is actually very good. I like the dialogue of this story, even though at times I did think it was a bit excessive. I think there could be more action than just dialogue, to say the least. The direction by Paddy Russell was not so good on the other hand. This is the first story she's directed since the massacre all the way back in season 3. And I think she failed to convey certain bits and pieces, and she did get some good shots and pieces here and there, but I think overall, I think this is probably one of the weakest stories that she's actually directed. This is actually really good. I like the conspiracy part mostly, but the execution was just god awful. I do feel as if Michael Moore was trying to overcomplicate the plot being carried out to 6 parts, which ideally would have worked out as a 4-parter. The conspiracy part was alright in its own, but it didn't really have other subplots such as Sarah Jane being abducted and sent to that fake spaceship slash bunker, Yates betraying Unit, which pretty much came out of nowhere, and then when he returned to the Planet of the Spiders, it wasn't really acknowledged afterwards. And I think the issue with the Doctor being accused of stuff, it did kind of get a bit boring, to say the least. Yes, and I actually like the message of trying to make Earth a better place. It was actually done very well, but especially it was still very relevant to these climates. And I like the speech that the Doctor gave Yates in response to Yates betraying Unit. I think that's one of the very few positives I have with this story. On to the acting. Not as stellar as other stories, but it's still somewhat good. John Pertwee was very good, especially, but you can tell his heart wasn't really in it compared to other stories. He did look a bit disengaged, and he still tried his best, and I admire that. He still got some great moments, some humorous, such as him and Sarah Jane posing for their mugshots, and the Brigadier almost attacking the Brigadier after escaping from General Finch's military man. And I actually like the scene, as I mentioned a few seconds ago. I liked how he was like talking to Yates, understanding his views on why he's working for Operation Golden Age, but he says, I understand your views, I can sympathize with them, but that doesn't really give you the right to wipe away the lives of other people on the planet. Elizabeth Sledden was great as Sarah Jane. She's definitely one of the highlights of this story. I liked how her characterization actually continues from what is established in the Time Warrior, and I love how determined she was in trying to convince the people on the bunker that is not all was it seems, but even though it actually wasn't. And I also liked how Sarah Jane is very intrepid, and you definitely see a lot of that intrepidness there, even though she almost gets killed in some parts, especially when she was in that place where the dinosaur was being held, was chained up, and then I think it tried to attack her, and then obviously someone, I think it was Yates that locked her in. And but obviously, I think it fell on her head and almost, I think the beam fell on her head and almost killed her. But that was still very interesting for Sarah Jane, and I actually like how they're making Sarah Jane a very interesting character here. This is also a unit family story, so you do get to see the Brigadier and the others. Nicholas Courtney was very good as the Brigadier, and I liked how loyal he remained, how loyal he was to the Doctor, even though the Doctor was being accused for causing all the dinosaurs to be preparing all over London, even rescuing him from General Finch's men. It definitely establishes the relationship between the Brigadier and the Doctor a lot further, even though I think it was episode 4 cliffhanger that Finch actually ordered the Brigadier to arrest the Doctor, and you can tell the Brigadier he didn't really want to, but he had to because Finch is an army man, and the Brigadier is just the Brigadier of Unit. Benton was very good in the story. I liked how enthusiastic he was in organizing the dinosaur sightings in part one. It was also a very funny scene, and I also liked how he volunteered to get attacked by the Doctor with his Venusian Aikido when Finch arrested him and held him in Unit HQ. And you can tell he can tell that the Doctor was right, so he pretty much had to like volunteer to get attacked by the Doctor. So it was a very nice scene for Benton, and I think Benton actually gets a promotion in the second in his follow up story in Invasion of Planet of the Spiders. In the room, Captain Mike Yates. Richard Franklin, I think he did a very good job in this story, but with Yates betraying Unit, it didn't really make much sense. I understand wanting to continue the storyline with him doubting the human race that was established in the Green Death, but it was done in a very wrong way. I don't think the story should have even happened at all. Even if they created a new character, it would probably have just been as bad as what Yates' characterization was. I mean, are we really supposed to care about this character that all the other characters seem to care about, even though you've never seen this character before? It doesn't really make that much sense. It would have made a lot more sense for Yates to be actually agreeing with the Operation Golden Age, but he realizes that it would have been wrong for him to do so. He would probably even have him contemplate betraying units, but having him just contemplate betraying units and then obviously seeing what they were doing was wrong, and having him decide to like work with units until the very end would have been a lot better as opposed to him being the straw character and betraying unit completely. And as I mentioned before, when Yates returns in Planet of the Spiders, all the characterization and that storyline has pretty much been wiped away. It was almost as if it never happened, except for mentioned very early on. But obviously, when he met the Doctor Yates, and so when he met the Doctor and the Brigadier later on in that story, it was just at least have some sort of tension between the Brigadier and Brigadier and Yates, or even the Doctor to say the least. But so it was pretty much a very redundant plot for Yates, and Planet of the Spiders was the last ever episode. There were the very few side characters in this story were a bit too much, but as if they were left behind by the convoluted plot. But I think the main ones were on the bunker or slash ship with Sarah Jane. There were Mark. Used to be an athlete called John Crichton. Sarah was able to convince him that the ship wasn't real. We also had Adam. He formerly known as Nigel Castle. He was a novelist, and he began to realize that the ship wasn't real. And we had Ruth, formerly known as Lady Collingford. She was an environmental activist, and she clashed with Sarah on occasions, realizing the ship wasn't real. But I think Sarah wasn't able to convince her that the ship wasn't real until she actually saw it for herself. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So on to the villains of the story. There were four villains. One of them being very minor, I didn't really give a damn about. But I do think four villains for a story was a bit too much. So the first main villain was General Finch. He was an officer in the British Army and had a thing against the Doctor. And obviously, Finch was working secretly working for Sir Charles with Operation Golden Age. I don't think he should have been the villain. I don't think it was even explained why he was actually working for Sir Charles in the first place. But he was okay, but I don't think he should have been the villain, and I'll explain more on that later. The second villain was Whitaker. He was the main scientist that was working on the Golden Age project, and I think he wanted to he applied for a government grant, but it was turned down, so he started working against the machine that was manipulating time. He was an okay villain. I definitely think he should have been one of the main villains, and he actually was, but he should have been the only one of two villains. And Peter Niles did portrayed him very well, and I'm glad that Peter Miles returns in Genesis of the Daleks in the following season. The third villain and the main big bad of this story was Sir MP Charles Grover. He was appointed the minister during the dinosaur crisis, but at the same time he was secretly in charge of the Golden Age projects, and he definitely sabotaged the Doctor's attempts to restore things to normality. He was a dastardly villain, and he definitely should have been the first main villain of this story. He and Veritica should have been the main villains. The fourth villain was Butler. He was an assistant to Grover, and he was just there to say the least. I didn't really care for him. I have with Invasion of Dinosaurs, and to say there are a lot of faults, including the ones I mentioned already, such as the plot being too convoluted. But and to add to that point, I did notice a bit of a plot hole. The people that were outside the spaceship and the bunker, they will be erased from existence because of the machine Whitaker was working on. So if the machine were to wipe everyone aside away from the bunker out of existence, why was there a need to evacuate everyone from London while the dinosaurs were roaming free on the streets? It doesn't really make any sense, because you want to wipe out the human race by turning everything back to the way it was, but why evacuate everyone from London? It doesn't make any sense at all. And so the other thought I have was the writing of Aiton's betrayal of Unit, and obviously that was just a very dumb plot twist. I didn't even last very long, and because at the end of the story he was just turned away from Unit. The brigadier granted him sick leave and giving him chance to quietly resign. So I think the other thought I have of the story that I haven't mentioned were the dinosaurs themselves. I think the dinosaurs just merely a stunt cast to try and get viewers to try and watch this story. And the dinosaurs, they don't even do a whole lot other than just pop around here and there. And the dinosaurs were just mainly just a plot convenience in my eyes, which is kind of ironic how the story is actually called Invasion of the Dinosaurs. You'd have expect them to have at least some form of storyline for themselves. Maybe Doctor Who does Jurassic Park 20 years before, but no, they were just plot devices and just very bad plot conveniences. And to add to the mishandled plots, the pacing was very bad. I felt all six parts dragged, and even the part six did pick up a little bit, but it was just too little too late in my eyes. And I do think Sir Charles Grover should have been the overall big bad of this story, with Whittaker being the secondary big bad. It would have made much more sense. Finch, I think he could have been working for the Operation Golden Age, but then I would have had him realize what Grover was doing was wrong, and he would decide to at least team up with the Doctor, the Brigadier, and Unit to try and bring Sir Charles Grover down. I think that would have been that would have made the story a lot better. So to conclude, Invasion of the Dinosaurs really brought some good ideas to the table and had a great script to back it up. But the overall execution was a major disappointment. I watched this story 3 times, and I don't think my opinion would ever change on this story. And it's a shame that this is the last story Malcolm Hook actually writes, because he didn't like how the dinosaurs were spoiled, so he decided to just resign from Doctor Who completely. And it's a real shame, and I probably would have to give Invasion of the Dinosaurs a 4 out of 10, making this story our very first bad egg in a very long time, and it's a very rare misfire in the John Pertwee era. So my next review will be Death to the Daleks, the last story of the trio of Dalek stories in the John Pertwee era, so look out for that. Thank you for watching this review. Please let me know what you thought of Invasion of the Dinosaurs and this review. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and join my Discord server on the link below. Until then, see you later.